Oakley Fleming, please be making your way to the holding pens. Class 1 of market barrows can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Lance Cornwell, Ansel Hatfield, Kendall Jett, Cassidy Bain, Alex Bosom, and Savannah Smith.
Good evening, and we're going to start your Market Hog show here. The young lady that brings her solo entry here for this first class. I think a barrow that does some very nice things for us in terms of the way that he silhouettes, especially as you get a little distance off of him. He's got enough extension up front. He's got enough rib. He's got enough body. I'd like to give him just a shot more shape as we study him down the top part of his skeleton and give him just a little bit more groceries as he leaves you. But I still think a barrow fundamentally does a lot of really positive things. Big round of applause for the young lady as she heads on back to the barn.
Class 2 market barrows, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Colton Phillips, Hadley Dietrich, Emma Krebs, Isabella Carnahan, Riley Carnahan, and Briley Clem. We would like to introduce our judge for this evening, Gus Mitchum. Gus grew up on a fair-to-finish operation outside of South Salon, Ohio. He and his family own Mitchum Show Pigs, which consists of a herd of 20 purebred sows. Gus attended Miami Trace High School and Southern State College, majoring in ag business. During his livestock judging career, Gus placed as high individual in the state in both 4-H and FFA judging contests, as well as he and his team winning state. The group went on to be third in the nation, earning them the opportunity of traveling to Scotland and Ireland to judge. Gus has judged shows in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia. Gus enjoys giving back to the youth and volunteers his time with the OH Pig Circuit and in the swine barn at the Ohio State Fair. Please give our judge a warm welcome.
You're good. You can just hang on. Great way to start one of our first full classes. I think the two young men that ended up in the top end, those two surfaced relatively quickly for me because those two, if you study them, regardless of build or color, those two silhouette very, very similar. They both have enough extension up front. They both have enough rib cage. They have more than an abundance of muscle. Foot and bone's great. I think where the advantages lie with the light-colored barrow is simply when we put him in motion. He wants to take a longer step. He actually will fill that track better with that rear leg versus the belted barrow there in second. I think that's where the advantage separates him. Taking nothing away from the young man in second, I think that's a wonderful barrow to be this early on in the day. I think where we just kind of see a hindrance on him, he doesn't take quite as fluent or as long of a step out of those rear two. If we get him to take a bigger, longer step, I think that pair gets a little bit tighter. It kind of gets a little bit more hairy as we kind of get down in the class because you have to figure out where you want to put your priorities. I think the powerhouse here that comes out next is the one that we really need to gravitate towards because this is a barrow that actually has probably got the most spread up high, most dimension, but unfortunately he doesn't put it in as a need of a package. When we set him into motion, he's probably the more restricted off of his shoulder or out of his rear too. But I think one that you have to really appreciate in terms of just overwhelming power and dimension, I think he has his place. Unfortunately, he just ran into two that just wanted to motor a little bit better. Young man coming out next. Oh, sorry. Good? Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Young lady Unfortunately, this is one that didn't get to see a lot of him. He tended to want to ride the rail a little bit more, but one that definitely has a little bit more extension and look up front than the barrow directly in front of him. But unfortunately, this one, he wants to get a little bit more uncoordinated out of those rear two. He doesn't want to put him down quite as true and a square. So I think if we could correct him there, that's a barrow that offers a lot of really good things, especially as you study him through his front 1/3. That's right. I didn't know where she went. Okay. Yes. Sorry about that. Young man's solid black barrow there that's exiting the ring. I think that's a really, really good barrow, especially as you get off and study him from the profile. He's got more than enough extension up front. He's got some great shape working down the top part of his skeleton. It's where we would just like to square him up directly as he goes away from me. That's where he kind of just falls out of favor for me. This is a really intriguing barrow to kind of round out our class with, because if we study him right there directly behind his blade, back, that's a barrow that has a lot of things that's working down the top part of his skeleton you really like. It's when you get off of either end of him that he kind of falls out of favor, for me particularly, especially as we study him from just hock to ground. He really needs to square up there, and we need to blend him a little bit better behind his blade there, clean him up in his throat latch. But I think one that, from a cutability and a product standpoint, a really, really nice barrow to round our class out with. Give those kids a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Class 1 Market Barrows. First place, Alex Bosom. Second place, Lance Cornwell. Third place, Savannah Smith. Fourth place, Ansel Hatfield. And fifth place, Kendall Jett. Entering the arena at this time is Class 2 Market Barrows. Class 3 Market Barrows can be making their way to the show arena. These exhibitors are Isabella Bickle, Shelby Swader, Peyton Smith, Elijah Newberry, Riley Ealing, and Stacy Arthur.
I think a really logical place to start in this class with the young ladies. This is one that, in terms of just having the ESTs, but also tying it together in a really well-presented package. Really nice barrow. Love the look that this one gives us up front. I know he doesn't quite have the extension that we want in some of these more trendier show pigs, but I like the stoutness that he brings. He's not only stout in his skull, he's broad in his back, he's great in his rib cage, he's big in his feet and legs. Really nice, solid place to start in this class with. Young men's barrow. I think he already left. He already went back to the pen. Really nice barrow. Definitely has the advantages, especially as we study him out through the front portion there of his skeleton. As in regards to the barrow that wins the class, he's cleaner in that lower part of his throat. Unfortunately, that barrow that goes in second, we just got to score him up a shot more from behind to make him a little bit more of a safe place to go and go into contentions with the barrow that leads the class off with. It gets a little bit more challenging as we sort down through the class. I think the one that has the next abundance of positives is the young ladies barrow that we just didn't quite get a great read on. He just didn't want to leave those the rail down there. But still one, if you do get a chance and you study him, he's got a tremendous amount of shape down the top part of his skeleton. He's great in his angles. Unfortunately, he just doesn't want to get out and drive, and he is just a little bit more restricted out of those rear two. But a barrow that does offer a lot of positives as we get to evaluate him a little bit more. Then we go to the young ladies' predominantly white barrow here. I think one, in terms of just a markability and a cutability standpoint, he's got a tremendous amount of shape and amount of dimension to him. So there's a ton of product working this big. I really just need to square him up from behind. I've got to blend him a little bit better there out of his ham-loin junction. And I just got to make him just tie that neck a little bit higher out of his blade. But one, if you study him from the side, he does have a tremendous amount of benefits when you get to evaluate him. The challenge for me was when we rounded out this class, these are two hogs that I really do think have a tremendous amount of market value, and it really comes down to more of a muscle standpoint. I know the advantages lie in bone with more of the calico one, but the predominantly black barrow here that we're going to go next to last here in this class has a tremendous amount more muscle, especially when you study him down the top part of his skeleton, and right when he leaves you directly, that's where his advantages really truly lie. Moving into the calico barrow here that's going to round us out, I think a barrow that does have some advantages in terms of he is a little bit trendier about his head and neck. He's a little bit bigger about his foot and bone. Unfortunately, he's just the lighter in terms of his muscle, especially as you study when he directly leaves you. He just kind of leaves you wanting a little bit more oomph as he tracks away. But I think a really nice class of pigs to head on back to the barn. Give them a big round of applause.
Congratulations, Class 2 Market Barrows. First place, Briley Clem. Second place, Colton Phillips. Third place, Hadley Dietrich. Fourth place, Emma Krebs. And fifth place, Isabella Carnahan. Entering the arena at this time is Class 3 market barrows. Class 4 market barrows can begin making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Jonathan Noss, Kemper Shepard, Asher Hatfield, Kaylee Jennings, Jack Wilson, and Olivia Havarilla.
Really interesting class, especially as we get into the upper end. I think these two bears complement each other very, very well because where one is deficient, the other one has it in spades, and I think that's where they complement each other so well and why they make a really nice pair. Young lady's belted gill here directly in front of me is who we're going to elect to lead off with, and I think one, just from a show perspective, not only is his skin and hair right, but he's presented to a T, but one that the more and more you study him, the more and more you find you like about him. He's deep in his cage. He's big and broad down the upper part of his skeleton. Is he the trendiest? Probably there in that lower throat. Probably not. But still one that when he's presented and when he's drove really is eye-catching and one that really ticks a lot of the boxes. Taking nothing away from the blue belted bear there that's going to go in second. I think that one in terms of just raw lower skeleton, in terms of just openness there out of his chest floor, he does have an advantage. Unfortunately, he's not as trendy probably about his head and neck, and he doesn't quite have just as much punch as he leaves you as the bear that leads the class off with, but I still think one, in terms of just having an abundance of shape, still has a really nice silhouette as you get off on the side on him. Really nice place to go there in second. Challenge for me really came down to 3 and 4 in this class, and I really think that that's where there's some give and take in this pair. I elected to go with the young lady's calico bear because that bear is one that has more extension out of the front 1/3 of his skeleton. He's a little bit trimmer, especially when you study him down his top. I think in terms of just an overall markability standpoint and taking away the fact that I think he's just a notch bigger in his foot and bone, I think that's where the advantages lie with that calico. Taking nothing away from the young man's belted hog here because I think in terms of pounds of product and overall dimension, this bear has an advantage. I just think he's just a little bit wastier as we study him through the lower part of his skeleton and as we study him down his top. If we could freshen him up, I think that pair could get a little bit tighter and a little bit more interesting. Next two coming out, I think, are ones that, in terms of the opposites attract for the bottom part of this class. We've got one in the young man's that's probably the more trendy, attractive one of this class. Unfortunately, he's fighting what looks to be like either a tenderfoot or a little bit of an injury there out of his front end. I just got to give him a shot more shape down the top part of his skeleton, but I love the fact that he's very safe, secure, and that out of his rear too. Love the fact that I don't need to square him up or anything from behind. Really nice hog. Young lady's bear that's going to round out the class is one that probably has the most expressive shape down his top. Unfortunately, I think we need to dial back that muscle just ever so slightly, square him up from behind, make him just proportion out a little bit better as we study him out of his blade. But a really, really nice hog to round the class off with. Give them a big round of applause.
Congratulations, Class 3 Market Barrows. First place, Stacy Arthur. Second place, Shelby Swader. Third place, Isabella Bickle. Fourth place, Riley Ealing. And fifth place, Elijah Newberry. Entering the arena at this time is Class 4 Market Barrows. We need all first and second winners from Class 1 through 3 to be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Class 1 first place, Alex Bosom. Second place, Lance Cornwell. Class 2 first place, Briley Clem. Second place, Colton Phillips. And Class 3 first place, Stacy Arthur. And second place, Shelby Swader. Reminder that all third places need to be getting ready in the barns.
Young lady's blue-browed bear that's going to lead this class off with. I think when he hit the ring, that was one that really kind of caught my attention really early on. And he does it in a really logical way. He's got enough shape down the top part of his skeleton. But for me, the advantage really, really lies the farther distance I put between myself and him. The more I get off that pig, the more I can appreciate, because he's got more than enough extension and look up front. He's got more than enough chest. Love his footwork and bone work, especially for his proportions. But the biggest thing for me, he's square, he's safe from behind, and he's got a really good functioning hind leg. And for me, I'm a structure guy. I was always raised in the purebred side of things, and we're kind of a little bit more critical on them because we have to have an advantage somewhere. So if we can outwalk them, that's something. But I think that's where that bear really has an advantage, is when we put him into motion. The way he hinges and moves out of his rear too, he's got a clear advantage. Taking nothing away from the black-headed bear, because if we're strictly judging these things off the profile, other than the gland issue, this one from the side, it has as much look as any of them that we've seen all day. And he's got a tremendous amount of foot and bone. The two biggest things for me that really put him into second in my mind, it wasn't only the gland issue there that he has there out of that lower part of his skeleton, but it's when you directly get in behind him. I've got to square him up, but there's too many advantages that he possesses for me to slide him down any farther in my mind and be able to sleep at night, because that's a really, really nice pig, especially when you kind of get off from the side or you see him from a three-quarter coming at you. Really, really nice pig. Commend to that young man. Young man coming out next, I think this is one that in terms of, that should be turned around. There we go. Young man's belted one coming out here next is one that you have to really, really like, especially in this pair here coming down into 3 and 4. I think there's advantages in muscle, especially lying right here with the red-headed young man. This one, if you study him down his top, he's probably one of the more expressive and raw-shaped ones that we've seen that have slid farther down in this class. But especially when he gets out and drive, when he gets the head up and wants to present himself, that's a really nice put-together bear, and I think he's got advantages in foot and bone and shape over the bear that's going to follow him next. The young man down there in the corner that's going to follow directly behind him, this is a bear that just kind of gives up too much of an advantage attitudes directly as you study him down the top part of his skeleton. He's not quite as expressive. He doesn't quite have that roll, but I do love the fact that he's got the trendy look up front. He's great in his hip and hind leg. I just got to get him a little bit more raw shape. Young man that had directly exited the ring there with the solid black one that will directly follow. That one, unfortunately, just didn't proportion or tie together. The farther I put myself off that bear, the harder it was for him to tie together. We need to lay him back in his blade a little bit more. We got to give him a shot more muscle directly as he leaves us, and he's got to take a bigger, longer step. But a really nice way to end that class. Please give them kids a big round of applause as they head on back. We get these four class winners back out here for this first division, and I think that they are a very great representation for their particular weight ranges. I think it becomes a two-horse race when we kind of get these things back out here, and for me, I think there's one that just has all the extras and more especially when we start studying more as we study them at the ground and build them up. There's one that just has an advantage in terms of foot and bone and just that rugged look. Young lady's belt to get directly in front of me is going to be a division winner. Congrats.
Colton Phillips, please be entering your way into the show arena. Hadley Dietrich, please be making your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that second place, and as we talked those two in class, this one from the side we really, really like. But I think there's another individual out here that pushed our champion relatively hard especially when we talk to these early divisions. There's usually a little bit more clear cut at some of these county fairs. But I think there's one out here in terms of just having more presence and having more look. Just kind of got disadvantages on the bone side of things. But the young lady out of that last class is going to have your reserve in this division.
Kemper Shepard, please be entering the show arena. Jack Wilson, please be making your way to the holding pens.
we dropped that second place out. And I think he puts himself into the mix out here, and I think it kind of becomes a little bit more of a free-for-all the deeper that we go into this division. But there's one out here. I know he's not had the best attitude, but I still love the way he's built out of his front end. Young man on the far side is going to have your next down in this division.
Lance Cornwell, please be entering the show arena, and Savannah Smith, please be making your way to the holding pens. Shelby Swader, please be entering the show arena. Class 5 market barrows, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Claire Westner, Mason Ross, Bristol Pallets, and Hunter Ross. Congratulations, lightweight barrows, grand champion Briley Clem, reserve champion Kaylee Jennings, third overall Alex Bosom, fourth overall Stacy Arthur, and fifth overall Lance Cornwell. Class 6 market barrows can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Charlotte Williams, Paisley Ealing, Allie Morrison, Paisley Tyndall, and Hunter Ross.
I think probably one of the more straightforward classes that we've had today. These guys actually fell into place relatively easily for me. Young man directly in front of me is going to lead us off with the wide belted barrow. I think one that just in terms of he's got all the power and all the punch that he needs for this class, and he doesn't lack in any area and a glaring issue. If I really want to nitpick him ever so slightly, I just like for him to plant those rear two ever so slightly wider, and just because he wants to taper just a tick as he goes away. But I think a really nice place to start. start the class off with. Young man there in second, I think he just unfortunately gets beat on the bone department because that's a really slick fronted one that you really like him out of the front 2/3 of his skeleton. I love the way that he silhouettes from the profile. Unfortunately, we just kind of run out of steam, especially when we study him at the surface. I got to sharpen him just over his loin edge ever so slightly, but a really nice place to go in second. I really think the trade-off comes down here in 3 and 4. It all depends on where you want to put your priorities. With this being a market show, I am going to put a little bit more emphasis on product if we can, because at the end of the day, these still are terminal animals, and we need to keep that in mind. Young lady's more product-driven barrow here that's going to be in 3. I think one that has the advantage is not only in pounds, but in product, but he has more shape up high. He's got more shape as he leaves you. Biggest thing I need to do to correct this guy is I've got to square him up from behind and make him take a more comfortable step out of his rear too. But a really nice product-driven barrow there to sit in 3. Young lady that's going to round our class out with, I really like this one from the side, especially when he gets his head up and wants to drive. That's actually probably more of the trendier looking one of the 2 that round the class out with. Unfortunately, he just really runs out of gas when I study him on the upper part of his skeleton and directly as he leaves me. If I could give him just a shot more muscle and punch, I think that bottom pair could probably switch a little bit, and you can make a nice argument. But a really nice way to round the class out. Please give them a big round of applause.
Class 7 market bearers can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Sadie Woofer, Shaw Lux, Waylon Sr., Travis Brandenburg, and Brandon Woofer. Congratulations, Class 5 market barrows. First place, Mason Ross. Second place, Hunter Ross. Third place, Claire Westner. And fourth place, Bister Platz.
very, very fun top trio for this class, and I might get a little long-winded because there's a lot of fine points you want to discuss on these three because none of them are perfect, and they all bring their own positives and negatives to the table. Young man in the purples where I elected to start off with. I think this is the bear that I kept coming back to the most in my mind, especially in the top two here. He's got plenty of shape. He's got plenty of bone and foot. He's got more than enough look. If we're going to get nitpicky on him, I'd like to extend his hip ever so slightly, but I don't think it's enough that it impedes his motion enough to warrant that he needs to drift any farther. The bear that pushes him the hard is going to come in two, and I'm sure there's a few that are standing ringside that are scratching their head, and that's okay because there's one of these things that I love about this industry is it's not black and white. It's a murky gray area because it's all opinion based. The young lady does an absolutely great job presenting this bear. If we could take away the gland issue and just make this guy grab another gear, I think this is a really, really nice bear. Unfortunately, when you run into a class where you've got three really solid ones, it's the small, fine hairs that are going to split you, but taking nothing away from a bear in second. If we could just clean him up there ever so slightly in the lower part of his skeleton and fix that gland issue and just sharpen him just up over the top part of his skeleton and freshen him up ever so slightly. Very, very nice bear to land in second. Young lady's bear here that goes in three, I think is a really, really intriguing one in terms of he's not the flashiest, but the longer you study him, the more you read about him, the more you like about him. He may not be the most expressive down his top, but he's got plenty, especially on the light cross side of things. They don't always want to have quite the amount of punch that those dark crosses do. So I really, really like this one. The more and more you read him, the more you like him. If I could just blend him a little bit better there out of his ham-loin junction and just square him up ever so slightly from behind, I really think he wouldn't fall out of favor. Very, very nice bear to sit in three. Young lady coming out next is, this one's probably more of your more traditional, more markety bear in terms of the top part of his skeleton. He's a little bit rawer, he's a little bit leaner. I've got to square him up as he goes away in order to push him up higher in this class, but a really, really nice pig there. Young lady's bear that rounds out our class here. Unfortunately, this guy, he probably is just a little bit too modern in his frame. He's a little bit too restricted in his motion, and he's just a little bit too short about his face. But if you want to talk about a really big top and a really stout hip, he's probably one of the bigger and stouter hipped ones that we've seen all day, but a really, really nice bear to round this class out. Give her a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Class 6 Market Bearers. First place, Hunter Ross. Second place, Paisley Tyndall. Third place, Paisley Ealing. Fourth place, Allie Morrison. And fifth place, Charlotte Williams. Entering the arena at this time is Class 7 Market Hogs. Class 8 can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Mason Ross, Jackson Noss, Emma Reed, Stella Ninichuk, Savannah Pennington, and Addison Stratman.
a little bit more of a challenging class because I don't think there was one that just reaches out and grabs you right away. So on the initial evaluation of this class, I elected to go with the young man's solid black bear here. I think one in terms of just bringing the most amount of positives with the fewest amount of negatives to the table, that epitomizes that bear. He's got more than enough shape. He's got plenty of bone. He's got a great look up front. If we're going to have to change him anywhere, I'd just like to pick him up ever so slightly on the front end and just blend him a little bit there out of his ham-loin junction. But a really, really nice bear to start this class off with. The challenge was here in 2, 3, and 4. It's where you want to put your priorities. I go with the young man down there in the blue shirt. I think that one in terms of just overall look and appeal, but still maintaining enough shape is where I kind of fall into favor for him. That one, if we're really going to get nitpicky on that one, I've got to just get him a shot more foot and bone, and I got to give him an extra vertebrae there out of his neck to really kind of tie him together just a little bit better. But I think a really nice top pair of barrows to go ahead and lead this class off with. The challenge that comes out with the next two young ladies there in 3 and 4, I think there's some minor differences in these two bears, but there's also a lot of similarities. They both need cleaned up ever so slightly in their throat latch. They both need a shot more shape, but I think the advantages has to go with the young lady here directly in front of me. I think that one's just got a shot more genuine shape and roll to the top part of his skeleton, especially as you study him out of his hip. The young lady's solid black-headed barrow there, I think, is a really, really nice one. I think he just gets a little bit wastier as we compare to the barrows in front of him. If we could trim him up and just make him a little fresher, I think it'd be a really, really great way to advance him in this class. Young lady's calico bear that's going to round us out here. I think one, in terms of a product standpoint, has a really, really tremendous amount of product to offer us. Unfortunately, we've just got to give him more genuine shape and roll, especially as you study him down his top and as you study him out of his hip and stifle. He's got to have a little bit more punch there, but a really, really nice high cutability bear there to round our class off with. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn. young man's calico bear that we're going to lead this class off with. I think this one surfaced the minute that those shoulders passed that arch. He made a very good impression on me because that one is, if you study him from behind his blade forward, you can't design him any better. The farther you study him, you realize he's got a tremendous amount of shape. He's got a ton of rib shape. But at the same point, it's his proportions that I like the most. He's not a rib too long. He's not a rib too short. He's got appropriate amount of length of hip. I really, really like a lot of things about this barrow, and I think it's a really nice place to start this class. I think the barrow that follows him the best is the young man here directly in front of me in the green. I think when we get those things off to the side or we get directly in behind him, he resembles our class winner the most in terms of his genuine shape up high and his overall punch. Where those two really want to separate each other is directly as they leave you. One wants to get just ever so slightly a little pushier and wants to get a little bit more outside himself, but I still think a really, really nice place to fall into second. I think the advantages lie here in the young lady in third. That one is a little bit more safe and secure from behind. Unfortunately, he's got to grab another gear and to show me that he knows how to utilize that rear leg. Because unfortunately, when he wants to kind of hide more in the corner, he wants to be a little bit more on the rail, I can't quite get a good enough read on him. But I like a lot of things about that barrow. Just need to trim him up ever so slightly there in that lower throat and give him another little bit more of a faster pace to set him apart in this class. Young lady coming out here next with the calico. I think the challenging part for this class was these last three, and this is the one that surfaced for me. I think this one, the more and more you study him, you find more and more positives you like about him. He's got genuine shape. He's stout out of his hip. He's stout out of his shoulders. Biggest thing is we've got to give him a little bit more look and just kind of tie him together a little bit better. But I think a really, really nice barrow there to sit where he sits. Next two coming out, I think, are where the two challenging ones lie in this class because it's where do you want to put your priorities. One's a little bit stouter about their features. One's a little bit stouter about their muscle. For me, feature one in this class because I think this bear here, he's got plenty of shape. He's got plenty of dimension. I do love his foot and bone. I've just got to give him a little bit more genuine shape and freshen him up ever so slightly to move him up higher. Young lady that's going to round the class out with, in this bottom pair, I do think this one has the advantages in terms of just genuine shape. Unfortunately, it's as we study him at the surface, he lacks the foot and bone for me to advance him any higher in this class, so I think he's a great logical place to round this class out with. Please give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Class 8 Market Barrows. First place, Jackson Noss. Second place, Mason Ross. Third place, Addison Strotman. Fourth place, Stella Ninichuk. And fifth place, Savannah Pennington. We need all first and second placings from Class 5 through 8 to be making their way to the holding pens.
This was a really fun division to sort when we get these four class winners back out here, and I think they're really great representation, and I hope that you guys can follow along with me today, and I hope to be as consistent as possible. That being said, I think there's two that surface for me in this division, and it just kind of depends, where do you want to put your priorities? Do you want the one that's just the wow factor one, or do you want one that's just a little bit safer in terms of the way that they're built? And I really think that's the challenge that I keep coming back to, because there is one that there's so much I love about him, but there is something that I really need to change about him, but I do think that there is just too much good. Young Man's Calico out of that last class is going to be your division champion.
Mason Ross needs to be entering the show arena. Addison Stropman, please make your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that second place back out here, and I think he actually works his way into the mix relatively easily. But I think when we first came up with this division and we had those four class runners back out there was one that pushed our division champion really, really hard. And I think, in my opinion, he does take a little bit longer of a step, and that's kind of where I do think he has the advantage over that division champion. Help me congratulate the young man here in the purple. He's going to be reserve.
Paisley Tyndall, please be entering the show arena. Paisley, please be making your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that second place out here. We talked them in class, and there's so many things I really, really like about that barrow. That's why I think when he comes out here in this division drive, he falls into place relatively easy for me. He's your next best one. He'll be your third out.
Paisley Ealing, please be entering the show arena. Addison Stropman, please be entering the show arena. All other exhibitors are dismissed. Class 9 market bearers, please be making your way to the show arena. These exhibitors are Paisley Tyndall, Boone Burbage, Jax Dodson, Taylor Dopp, Cameron Hall, and Xander Fishback. Congratulations, Grand Champion Middleweight Barrow, Jackson Noss, Reserve Champion Hunter Ross, 3rd overall Paisley Tyndall, 4th overall Mason Ross, and 5th overall Hunter Ross. We would like to take a minute to thank all of our Market Hog show sponsors: Amber Averwater, Arch Materials, Cherry Fork Feed and Supply, David Pennington and Family, Evans Funeral Home, Hatfield Pigs and Pugs, Hilltop Farms, Tracy and Lynn Young, Holly Jennings and Family, Jim Crumbacher, Senior Fairboard Member, Tyndall Feed and Supply, Kevin Tyndall and Family, Robert M. Fee, Rorick Family Farm, and Wilfer Farms. Please give all of our sponsors a big round of applause. Class 10 market bearers could be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Isaac Bertzel, Olivia Havarilla, Madeline Royce, Cassidy Bain, and Kirsten Gray. This is a reminder that the sale trailer is open and you can consign your hogs from any point until now until 1 hour after the conclusion of the overall show.
I always enjoy when I get to do both showmanship and your market show because I get to get a glimpse of what I'm going to see later on in the evening. I believe this is the barrow the young lady used to win your overall showman today. And when he came into showmanship, I remember when showmanship was done, I actually texted my mom. I was like, I probably saw a really, really nice barrow in showmanship, and we usually don't get to see that. But the young lady's barrow that's going to win this class is one that I think it doesn't matter what angle you look at him from or you want to read him from. He's got more than enough shape. He's got more than enough dimension. Foot and bone's great. Flexibility is more than ideal. I think if we're really going to get nitpicky, he needs to be picked up ever so slightly on those front feet. But that's more of just a talking point because I don't think it detracts from him in any way. I think a very logical place to start the class off with. I think the one that next came best in this class is the young man directly in the center here. I think that one, in terms of a silhouette or a type and kind to our class winner, he does represent that category. I think if we could just shapen him up ever so slightly down the top part of his skeleton, stouten him up in his foot and bone work, he silhouettes with that barrow that leads his class off with much, much better. The challenging part was down in 3 and 4. I think it was just depending on where you wanted to put your priorities. I went for one that offered a little bit more punch and power, and that was the young lady's belted barrow here that's going to exit here very quickly. But that is a very nice barrow to sit down there in 3. Calico one coming out here next. When we study specifically from the profile, one that we love the extension that this one has out of the front 1/3 of his skeleton, it's when I step in behind. This is where I get a little bit more concerned. I've got to fill him in a little bit more at his ham-loin junction. I've got to square him up there out of his hip, and I got to square him up ever so slightly at the ground. But a really cool, trendy front of one that's got an extra bit of look, and he's really nice and attractive from the side. Like that pig a lot. Next one coming out, I think for these two that round out the bottom of this class, I think it gets a little bit more challenging for me because it just kind of wants to be, do you want to go more product-driven or do you want to kind of stick a little bit more on the show side? Young man's belted one here is the one I elect to go with because I think it has a little bit more genuine roll and shape up high. I just got to make him track a little bit wider and make him just a little bit more fresh, up, especially as you study down the top part of his skeleton to get him a little bit higher. Young man's barrow that rounds out the class, I think from a product and a commercial standpoint, is a very, very high contender. He's got plenty of product. He's got plenty of spread. I just got to have more genuine roll. I've got to clean him up in his throat latch and just give him a little bit more look up front. But a really, really nice pig to round this class off with.
Class 11 market barrows, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Riley Borchers, Allie Morrison, Scarlett Lucky, Kylie Bosom, and Caitlin Brandenburg. Congratulations, Class 9 Market Barrows. First place, Paisley Tyndall. Second place, Boone Burbage. Third place, Taylor Dopp. Fourth place, Cameron Hall. And fifth place, Jax Dodson.
Feel like we had a little bit more give and take here on this class. The top two here was a little bit more of a challenge for me because there really wasn't one that just absolutely reaches out and grabs you and has all the extras and the pieces. But the lone belted barrow here is where we're going to start this class off with. I think out of the contenders here, especially on the top end, he does bring the most benefits to the table. He's got genuine shape. He's got genuine roll. I think he has enough of everything else. If I had to correct him anywhere, I just want him to take a little bit more of a longer step and just yank his tail head up ever so slightly. But I think in terms of his advantages of muscle and dimension, he firmly gets to sit here in the first hole. I think what the challenge comes as we go down on this class and finding where we want to just put our priorities. I know this one right here probably just needs a little bit more details on skin and hair, but the more you study this barrow, the more you can appreciate him. I know he doesn't have the flashiest top line, but you study the way that this guy's built in his skeleton. He's got a great hip and hind leg. He's got an appropriate set to his blade. He's got more than enough look up front. If I had to just correct him ever so slightly, I'd like to clean his skin and hair up ever so slightly and give him just a little bit more genuine roll up high, but a really, really nice barrow to sit down in second. The three that round out this class, I think, have a lot of similarities in terms of where they have their advantages and they have their disadvantages. Young lady here directly in front of me is going to be the next one out, and I think this one, in terms of just having a little bit more genuine shape up high and just being more busted open, especially coming and going, is where his advantages lie. I'd like to make him take a little bit more of a comfortable step, but that's getting very, very, very picky as we're working our way down through this class. Young man here coming out next, I think this is one in terms of foot and bone has the advantages of the barrow that precedes him, but unfortunately he just kind of runs out of gas. Especially as we study him down his top line. He wants to sag ever so slightly in the center portion of his skeleton, but I think his added foot and bone and just overall dimension is what kind of lets him surface off the bottom of this class. But the young lady that's going to round us out, I've got to clean that one up in his throat latch. I got to give him a little bit more genuine roll, and I got to give him a little bit more bone, but I do love the amount of rib and dimension that one brings to the table. Nothing to take away as he leaves this class. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back.
Class 12 market barrows could be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Sawyer Fairchild, Caitlin Woofer, Brantley Clem, Bristol Pallets, and Shelby Batum.
I think the two that we elect to lead this class off with surface relatively quickly for me. So I think where you just want to put your priorities, I think there's one that we just got to see a little bit more of and had a little bit more ring presence, and that's the young lady's belted bear there down on the far end. I think if we study that one from nose to tail, I think that one has the advantages not only in shape but in dimension, but where they really set themselves apart is when they directly want to come at you. I think that one is just a little bit more busted open, and it just has a little bit more genuine oomph as we study them as they leave us. But I think it's a really nice top pair. Young lady's blue-headed and blue-hipped one that precedes him. I think this is a really nice bear. Unfortunately, we just didn't get to see enough of him, but what we did get to read, I think he's got more than enough shape. He's a nice and safe mark as we read him from behind. I think he's genuine in terms of his role. I just would like to probably stouten him up ever so slightly, coming and going, to kind of put him a little bit more firmly in that second place. But a really nice bear. Young lady here in 3, if we could redesign this one from his ham loin back, we've got a really nice bear here, because from that ham loin forward, he's got look, he's got shape, he's got dimension. Unfortunately, I've got to reconstruct him there, especially as we study him from his hock to the ground. I've got to square him up as he's leaving us to move him up any higher in that class. Young lady coming out next, I think this is one, I had a little bit more of a challenge on these last two, because there's subtle differences here that neither of them are perfect in the way that they're designed, but they both have some advantages. I think this one's added look and overall scale is really what sets him apart, because that one, he's a little bit higher performing, he's a little bit more growthy. Does he have as much oomph or overall dimension as the bear that's going to follow him? No, but I think his added look and overall just eye appeal is what separates this pair. Young lady's bear that's going to round out this class, one that has more genuine shape than the bear that precedes him. Unfortunately, we just got to make him proportion out and balance a little bit better in order to move him off the bottom of this class. But a really nice way to round this class out with. Please give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Class 11 Market Barrows. First place, Caitlin Brandenburg. Second place, Riley Borchers. Third place, Kylie Bosom. Fourth place, Scarlett Lucky. And fifth place, Allie Morrison. Entering the arena at this time is Market Barrows Class 12.
think it's a really, really nice top pair here. But the young lady's blue barrow. From those of you that are on the outside of the ring, I encourage you, if you don't believe me, that one has enough genuine shape up high. Go back to the pin and take a look at him, because there's about an inch of hitting down the top part of his skeleton. So that made it a little bit more of a challenge for this top end. But the young lady's blue barrow, I think, in terms of just having all of the pieces that he needs and tying it together in a better package, that's where the advantages lie with the blue-headed one. Because that one, from nose to tip, I think not only if we study him from the profile or we get up on top of him, he overwhelms you, and not only in look but in power. If we had to clean him up just in that lower part of his skeleton where that gland is, just ever so slightly, just to make him a little bit more eye appealing on the one side, but not enough to detract from him. Young lady's belted one that's going to go in two. I think the advantages in just overwhelming shape that's obvious goes with this one, but as we study him, I think there's still advantages on the blue barrow. This one has just ran out of gas for me, especially as we study him at the surface. I've got to stouten him up in his bone work to give him a little bit more of a competitive edge over the one above him, but I still think one in his lines and the way that he silhouettes is still very, very, very high caliber. Really, really like that barrow to be in two. Young man coming next is one that I really, really like. In any other class, he probably could be pushed up a little bit higher. Unfortunately, he just ran into two really, really solid barrows in front of him. This is a blue hog that you really, really have to like in terms of his flexibility and his looseness of skeleton. But unfortunately, that looseness is starting to kind of work as a disadvantage and not as much as an advantage, especially as we study him there right before his ham-loin junction. Right there in his spine, he wants to sag ever so slightly there. So you got to strengthen him there in his top line. But he has more than enough genuine shape. Love the look he has up front. Just got to freshen him up and strengthen him there in his top line. The two coming out that are going to round out our class, I think two hogs that kind of contrast each other, and one has the advantage in terms of just pounds of product. One is a little bit more showy in terms of how they're presented. I think the advantages lie here with the young ladies. One down-eared barrow there, it's on the far end of the ring. That hog has more genuine product and more genuine roll up high, and I think that's just where he kind of takes the cake. Young lady it's going to round our class out with, I still think that's a really, really nice blue hog in terms of just how he looks with the profile. He's got some extension up front. He's got some flexibility. He's got some foot and bone. I've just got to bust him open in his skeleton. I got to give him more genuine roll up high to move him up any higher, but still a really, really nice place to end our class with. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
We need all first and second placings from class 9 through 12 to be making their way to the holding pins. Class 9 first place, Paisley Tyndall. Second place, Boone Burbage. Class 10 first place, Madeline Royce. Second place, Olivia Havarilla. Class 11 first place, Caitlin Brandenburg. Second place, Riley Vorgers. Class 12 first place, Bristol Plouts. Second place, Katie Woofer. Congratulations, Class 12 Market Barrows. First place, Bristol Pallets. Second place, Katie Woofer. Third place, Brantley Clem. Fourth place, Sawyer Fairchild. And fifth place, Shelby Bainham.
I've always been trying to be as time efficient as I can. Not that I don't want to give your kids as much time in the ring as they possibly can get, but when there's divisions like this that I feel that there's ones that just kind of surface relatively easy, it doesn't matter if we spend 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 100 minutes. I think that it's not going to change anything. There's still going to be one that's just absolutely overwhelming in that division. Young lady directly in the center of the ring is going to be your division champion.
Boone Burbage, please be entering the show arena. Taylor Dott, please be making your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that second place out here, and I don't think he takes anything away from this particular drive. But I think there was one that if we had to say pushed our division champion a little bit harder, there's another individual out here in terms of the amount of look and the amount of ring presence they have. I think it's just another really high caliber individual. Please help me congratulate the young lady's light crosser. He's going to be reserved.
Katie Wolfer, please be entering the show arena. Brantley and Clem, please make your way to the holding pens. Riley Borchers, please be entering the show arena. Kylie Bosom, please make your way to the holding pens. Taylor Dott, please be entering the show arena. All other exhibitors in the holding pens are dismissed. Taylor Dott needs to be entering the show arena. You have 2 minutes. Congratulations, Grand Champion Heavyweight Division Market Barrow, Paisley Tyndall, Reserve Champion Bristol Pallets, 3rd overall, Caitlin Brandenburg, 4th overall, Boone Burbage, and 5th overall, Madeline Royce. We need all Grand and Reserve champions from our lightweight division, middleweight, and heavyweight to be making their way to the holding pens for our final drive. Lightweight Grand Champion Briley Clem, Reserve Kaylee Jennings, Middleweight Grand Champion Jackson Noss, Reserve Hunter Ross, and Heavyweight Grand Champion Paisley Tyndall, Reserve Bristol Pallets. We need 3rd overalls to be getting ready in the barns. In between the conclusion of the barrow show and the beginning of the gilt show, we are going to take a small break just to rinse down the ring. Reserve Heavyweight Division Bristol Pallets, please be making your way to the holding pens.
Going into this grand Barra drive, I happened to think of something my old ag teacher always used to convey to me when we were at our judging practices when I was in high school, and she was always like, Gus, remember, if you think long, you're more than likely going to think wrong. And I think this division or this gender drive is going to be what kind of probably epitomizes that for me, because I think there is several out here that are very, very good representations for the modern day show pig, especially on the crossbred end of things. And I think we type in kind very similarly throughout the divisions and throughout the classes. And I think there's one that just surfaced, and I think he's an absolute just creature. And I wouldn't run into him into a dark alley because he'd be absolutely intimidating. Help me congratulate the young ladies heavyweight. He's going to be your champ.
Bristol Pallets, please be entering the show arena. Caitlin Brandenburg, please be making your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that blue reserve division in here, and I think he gets himself right into the hunt right away. We talked that class of how good they were and how high of a caliber they were. I do think there was one out here that pushed our champion really, really hard, and the more and more I study him, the more and more he looks and type and kind and build to our champion, but just in a smaller package. Help me congratulate that first division winner.
Alex Bosom, please be making your way to the holding pins. Caitlin Brandenburg, please be entering the holding pins. Hunter Ross, please be entering the show arena. Congratulations, Grand Champion Market Barrow, Paisley Tyndall, Reserve Champion Briley Clem, 3rd overall, Bristol Pallets, 4th overall, Jackson Noss, and 5th overall, Hunter Ross. Just a reminder that we are doing a grand overall market hog, so our grand and reserve barrows and our gilts will need to stick around for that after the conclusion of the market gilt show.
We're going to be resuming the gilt show at 8 o'clock. We will have one underweight gilt that will start for class 1 of market gilts.
Oakley Fleming, if you want to begin making your way to the show arena. Class 1 of market guilds can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Riley Ealing, Elijah Newberry, Sadie Woofer, Ace Tyndall, and Jack Wilson.
As we move here into your gilt divisions, the young lady here that's going to start us off, I think she brings a really nice, good lone entry one here. This gilt has a lot of look up front. She's got some genuine shape. She has enough foot and bone. I just got to probably bust her open off either end and kind of blend her a little bit more to Hamlin Junction. But a really, really nice place to start our gilt show off with. Please help me give her a big round of applause as she heads on back to the barn.
Class 2 market gilts can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Riley Carnahan, Kane Sexton, Lance Cornwell, Isabella Carnahan, and Brantley Clem.
I think a very logical way this class kind of came together, and the young man in the black shirt's going to start us off. And I think one, not only in terms of stoutness, but in terms of genuine shape, she kind of takes the cake. But at the same point, it's when we put her in motion, I think she does take the most comfortable step out of her top trio, and a really, really high caliber gilt to start with. A really interesting gilt here in the calico one that comes into, in terms of just being overly bulky and almost broody-like. I really appreciate that part, especially as we get to the point of her rib cage. She's probably one of the deeper-hearted ones that we've seen all day long. I don't think that one just has as much genuine punch as we get off of her. Where she has the advantages on the profile, she kind of falls into a little bit more of a disadvantage. As she comes directly at you, she kind of leaves us because it's mostly at the surface. She just kind of lacks that foot and bone, but still a really, really nice place to go in second. Young lady here in 3, I think one that has a lot of genuine shape, a lot of genuine dimension. I've just got to make her a little bit more attractive out of her front end and out of her head and neck, particularly to kind of put her at an advantage above the 2 in front of her, but still a really, really nice skill. I think that the challenging part was the 2 that round this class out with. There's one that has a little bit more of an advantage in terms of muscle. There's one that has a little bit more of an advantage in terms of design. And I think design in this particular class is where the advantage of the young man's calico that's getting ready to head on out. I think that one from the side and from the pattern standpoint, she's a little bit more attractive and a little trendier, but still having more than enough shape, dimension, and bone to keep her fully off the bottom. Young man's going to round our class out with, I think this one's just a little bit too raw and lean for my comfort today. I do think that one has a lot of genuine roll up high, but I've just got to give her a little bit more flesh to cover up that overwhelming muscle to kind of make her blend and balance a little bit better. But still one that through her front 1/3 has got an advantage is in terms of just that look and presentation out of her front 1/3. But like I said, we've just got to get a little bit more flesh down the top part of her skeleton to kind of give her a little bit more appeal. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Kay Sexton, please make your way into the holding arena. We would like to introduce our judge for today, Gus Mitchum. Gus grew up on a fair-to-finish operation outside of South Salon, Ohio. He and his family own Mitchum Show Pigs, which consists of a herd of 20 purebred sows. Gus attended Miami Trace High School and Southern State College, majoring in ag business. During his livestock judging career, Gus placed as high individual in the state in both 4-H and FFA judging contests, as well as he and his team winning state. The group went on to be 3rd in the nation, earning them the opportunity of traveling to Scotland and Ireland to judge. Gus has judged shows in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia. Gus enjoys giving back to the youth and volunteers his time with the OH Pig Circuit and the Swine Barn at Ohio State Fair. Please give our judge a round of applause. Congratulations, Glass 1 Market Gilts. First place, Ace Tyndall. Second place, Jack Wilson. Third place, Sadie Woofer. Fourth place, Elijah Newberry. And fifth place, Riley Ealing. Class 3 Market Gilts, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Asher Hatfield, Savannah Pennington, Shelby Swader, Kendall Jett, and Jaden Swader.
A little bit more of a challenging class. I don't think there was the one that just kind of reaches out and grabs you like we have seen in the barrows, on the barrow side or these earlier gilt classes. But I think a nice place to start with, young man in the white shirt down there on the far side. I think that's a gilt that, in terms of just the way that she's put together, has the most benefits in terms of the way that she ties it together. She has the look up front she needs. She has the amount of shape that she needs. Is she overwhelming in terms of her power? Absolutely not. But I think in terms of her balance and her proportions, she's the most correct for me today, and I think a very nice place to start us off. If we want to talk powerhouse, it's the gilt in two. Young man down there in the corner has an absolute just behemoth of a gilt. She's big top, she's big cage, she's big centered. Unfortunately, her two biggest issues with me is I've got to make her take a more comfortable step, and I have to square her up from behind. But when we get off on the profile, still I really, really like that gilt a lot. Unfortunately, those two more structural issues are just kind of where she fell short for me today. Gets a little bit more challenging as we kind of move into these bottom three. I think the young man right here directly to my right has the advantages in terms of he's got more overwhelming shape as we study that gilt down the top part of her skeleton. He's got more foot and bone. Is she probably the most trendy or the most proportional gilt? No. I've got to give her a little bit more rib. I've got to give her a little bit more body and overall flesh. But I still think a gilt that's very high performing and very, very, very good in terms of her overall shape. 4 and 5 is where I struggled a little bit more because those two gilts are very, very similar in terms of the way that they're designed and built. I think there's one that just has an advantage ever so slightly in terms of just overall chest width and foot and bone, and that's the young lady's calico gilt there, and I think that's what separates that pair, but I still think it's a very, very nice way to round this class out. Please give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn. Congrats.
Class 4 market gilts can begin making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Paisley Ealing, Cameron Hall, Case Sexton, Kemper Shepard, Travis Brandenburg, and Isaac Birdsall. Congratulations, Class 2 market gilts. First place, Lance Cornwell. Second place, Kane Sexton. Third place, Brantley Clem. Fourth place, Isabella Carnahan. And fifth place, Riley Carnahan.
Really fun class here to get kind of heated up here on the gilt side of things. And I think the young lady's gilt that we start the class off with is one that, out of the ones that we've seen today, probably if we want to talk about balance and proportionality, she is probably one of the best. Not only is her blade no bigger than her face or bigger than her hip, I mean, talk about one that silhouettes and profiles really nice. There's not a lot of glaring holes in there. If we want to get really nitpicky on this one ever so slightly, would just like to probably give her just a shot more muscle right as she leaves us, but I don't think it's enough to hinder her at all. Really like that one to start off with. The young man's belted blue here that goes in two. I think that one from more of like a barrow proportion probably is a little bit shorter in terms of her overall body length, but unfortunately I think that does take a little bit more out of her length of hip, and that makes her take a little bit more of a shorter stride. And that's what really in the end separates those two, is I think just the mobility of the blue-eyed one over the blue belted one here. It was just the advantages, but a really nice gilt to sit there in two with plenty of shape and muscle and dimension. Kind of becomes a little bit more challenging as we move down to three and four, because it was, where did you want to put your priorities? Did you want an overwhelming amount of power and dimension with probably a little bit more risk on our rear skeleton, or do we want to go with one that's a little bit more trendy, got a little bit more look, has enough shape, has enough appearance, but has more than enough flexibility and mobility? And that's where the advantages are with the young lady there in the yellow, and that's why she sits in three. Young man coming out next in four. If we want to talk about the power hog of the class, this is the one that has the most spread, most dimension, most rib, most body. Unfortunately, she puts it in too moderate of a package. I've got to lay her blade back, I've got to square her out of her hip, and I've got to square her at the ground and correct her in those areas, and then her power does get to shine through. Unfortunately, she ran into some really good built ones in front of her. Young lady that's going to round our class out here, I think this is one that's fighting a little bit of an injury, but we study that one from ham loin forward. Probably can hold her own with the rest of them in this class. Need to have her a little bit fuller, probably just need a little bit more overall flesh, fix that injury. Do love her bone, love her spread up high. Wish that one could have probably just had a little bit more ring presence. Really nice gilt to end our class with. Please give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
We need all first and second places from class 1 to 3 to be making their way to the holding pins. Class 1, first place, Ace Tyndall. Second place, Jack Wilson. Class 2, first place, Lance Cornwell. Second place, Kayan Sexton. Class 3, first place, Shelby Swader. Second place, Jaden Swader. And we need all third places to be getting ready in the barns.
This was more of a fun class to sort, especially on the top end of this class, because there's so much give and take on especially this top pair. One's got a little bit more flesh, one's a little bit leaner, one's a little bit more laid back in her blade, one's a little bit more forward in her blade. So it kind of just depends what is the give and take that you're willing to sacrifice for the benefits that you're looking for. I like the young man's here in the solid black gill. I think that one, in terms of just being more complete, is where she kind of falls into favor for me. There's not any glaring holes in her. I'd like to clean her up probably there just in that gland ever so slightly, but that's getting really, really nitpicky on one that's got some look up front. She's clean in her jowline. She's got plenty of shape. She's got plenty of mobility. I think she's just a really, really, really solid one with not too many holes. The more intriguing one is the 1 and 2, because if we study that one, especially coming and going, she's got more overall skeletal width on the lower part of her skeleton. I don't think she challenges the gilt in front of her in terms of spread up high. Biggest thing on this one, I've got to lay her back in her blade. I've got to give her a little bit more lower flank, and I've got to square her up out of her hip ever so slightly to put her higher up in this class. But I think a really good, solid second place hog for this individual class. Becomes more challenging kind of as we work through this class, because we have some that are fighting injuries, some that probably just needed some more time at home or some rest. Young man that falls into third, I think he kind of fell there more out of convenience than anything, because this is a gilt that just, in terms of her mobility, she's not fighting any injuries. She has enough shape. She has enough bone. I think she ticks enough of those boxes that we can make a good case for her here up in 3, and I think that's a very comfortable place considering some of the other challenges that we have. The 3 remainders coming out, the young ladies here coming out here in, I believe, 4. That one is one that, in terms of look up front, she probably has the cleanest throat. She probably has the longest neck out. Unfortunately, I've got to give her more spring to her rib. I've got to square her up out of her hip. I've got to square her up at her hock. And I've just got to give her more punch up high. But still a really nice, really good fronted, really good silhouetting gilt to lie where she lies. The 2 that round out our class, unfortunately, both of these are fighting injuries, so it kind of become a little bit more challenging of where they needed to lie in this particular class. For me, I think it's sort of between just overall ruggedness and just foot and bone, and that's where the advantages are here in the young man's black-headed gilt. In terms of what we study her at the surface, she's more overwhelming than some that we saw at the top part of this class. Unfortunately, I've got to square her up from hock to ground. I've got to give her a little bit more belly and flank, and I've got to get her over this injury just so I can read her rear leg a little bit more accurately. But still a really, really nice gilt. Similar situation here with the young man that rounds out our class. Unfortunately, this one just kind of fell short in terms of bone. I've got to lay her back in her blade a little bit. I've got to square her up from behind, and I've got to square her up out of her hip. It's still a really, really comfortable place for me to sit and end this class off. Please give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Travis Brandenburg, please be making your way to the arena.
we get these guys back out here for division, and like I talked on the Barrow Show, I try to be as consistent as I can throughout the day. I do think there's a pair of them in here that complement each other very, very well, because where one is a little weak, the other one is strong. So when it comes down to it, it's personal preference, and I think when it really comes down to it, it's mobility and that reach and flex out of those rear two that sorts this pair and kind of solidifies this division. Young ladies, Blue-Eyed Barrow is going to be your division champion.
Jaden Swader, please be entering the show arena. Kendall Drett, please make your way to the holding pins.
We drop that second place back out here, and I think she comes into the mix relatively easy, but I do think there's one that pushed that division champion a little bit harder in terms of just being able to make up where that one was weak. This one has it in spades. Young man's in the black shirt directly in front of me is going to be a reserve division.
Jack Wilson, please be entering the show arena. Sadie Wolfer, please be in the holding pins. Sadie Wolfer, please be entering the show arena. Case Sexton, please be entering the show arena. Isaac Bertzel, please be making your way to the holding pins. Class 5 market guilds can be making their way to the holding pins. These exhibitors are Ansel Hatfield, Charlotte Williams, Xander Fishback, Josie Davis, Ace Tyndall, and Brennan Wolfer. Congratulations, lightweight division market gilts, grand champion Shelby Swader, reserve champion Ace Tyndall, third overall Jack Wilson, fourth overall Travis Brandenburg, and fifth overall Jaden Swader. Class 6 market gilts can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Savannah Smith, Carson Sponsel, Boone Burbage, Wesley Tucker, Madeline Royce, and Waylon Sr.
Really fun trio of gilts to start this class off with, and depending if this is a market or a breeding show, it actually could change the placings ever so slightly here in this top three. I like to lead off with the young man there in the black shirt. I think that one, in terms of just having the most positives with the fewest amount of negatives, she's the one that she has enough look up front. She has a tremendous amount of shape up high. Love the length that she has out of her hip. If I could just clean her up ever so slightly there again in that gland, maybe make her take just a little bit more of a comfortable step. But again, we're getting really nitpicky on one that has more than enough chest, more than enough bone, more than enough look. So I think a very logical place to go. Challenging part is when we get down to 2 and 3 here. I think this is where we have the most trade-offs and the most discussions. There's one that has just an overwhelming bit more power and dimension, but they both have one thing that I'd like to correct about them, and I've got to square them up out of their hips. They both want to get a little rounder out of their hip, but I think the overall power and chest width and dimension advantages are in the belted gilt on the far end with the young man. I think that's where that pair separates themselves right when they directly come at you. She's just genuinely more opened up in her chest floor, and I think that's where she sets herself apart. Taking nothing away from the young lady's gilt here in 3 in the blue gilt. That one is an absolute, just a unique looking one when we study her from the side, especially for as much dimension that she has working down the top part of her skeleton. For a blue hog, we don't generally see that much genuine shape, but like the gilt above her, I've got to square her up out of her hip. She's fine at the ground, but if we could just square her up ever so slightly, open her up a little bit more on her chest floor, we could talk about flip-flopping that pair, but that's a very nice pair of hogs. Young lady coming out here next with the blue-browed one. I think this one is really genuine in terms of her top shape. Unfortunately, she just kind of falls out of place when it comes to blending that all together in a more kind of eye-appealing package. I've got to pick her up on her front feet. I've got to square her up from behind, but I think she has enough genuine product and shape up high that let her rise above the others in the class, and she has a little more advantages in terms of mobility. That's where the disadvantages are here in the young lady's belted one that come out next. This one, if we could get him to take a bigger, more comfortable step, I think this gilt could do a lot better, because if we want to talk about one that has an overwhelming amount of power, especially as we study her down the top part of her skeleton, as we study her at her base with her in her chest, she does overwhelm the competition. Unfortunately, she just doesn't take a comfortable, long enough stride for me. She wants to kind of push and get a little too wide as she leaves us. We got to square her up and just kind of pick her up in her overall scale to give her a little bit more of an advantage. Young lady's coming out next. I think this is one in terms of overall genuine shape and roll up high, has some very nice and intriguing pieces. Unfortunately, I've just got to level her up out of her front end. I've got to blend her better out of her ham-loin junction. I've got to clean her up there in her lower throat, but a really nice gilt. Young man that's going to round us out with, in terms of one that from the side does catch your eye. She's got plenty of foot. She's got plenty of bone. Love the length that she has to her hip. She's probably one of the better and more correct out of her hip and hind leg in this class. Unfortunately, she just kind of disappoints you in terms of overall width at the lower part of her skeleton, and we got to give her a little bit more spread and dimension up high to move her up off the bottom of the class. But still one, love that she has a really correct and well-working rear leg. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Class 7 market gilts can begin making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Kylie Bosom, Jackson Noss, Alex Bosom, Kirsten Gray, and Kay Sexton. Congratulations, Class 5 Market Gilts. First place, Ace Tyndall. Second place, Ansel Hatfield. Third place, Charlotte Williams. Fourth place, Josie Davis. And fifth place, Josie Davis.
Really, really fun top trio here in this class. But the one that really surfaces relatively easy is the young man directly in front of me. I think this one, in terms of just being balanced and having enough of everything, but not being overwhelming in any particular area. I know that's something we don't talk about nowadays. It's okay for them to be a little bit more reserved and a little bit more down to earth. They don't all need to be the freak of nature. I think that one's just a really good, solid market gilt to lead this class off with. Followed with the young lady's calico here. This one does have some advantages in terms of, especially when we get off on her on the side. When we study that one on the upper part of her skeleton and through that front 1/3, I think she does have a little bit more of an advantage in terms of look, especially out of that lower jaw and right over the top of her neck. I think that's where she does have some advantages. If I could blend her ever so slightly better out of that ham-loin junction, that gilt becomes a little bit more ideal in my mind. I think she has enough of all the extras that she brings to the table, but I think that where she just kind of falls out of favor is just, I think from the side, she doesn't quite have that overwhelming rib cage that the gilt in front of her does. Whereas the gilt here we follow in 3 does have an advantage in terms of sweep of belly and in terms of depth of rib. She kind of runs out of steam on bone, and overall, she's not quite as sharp as we study her down the top portion of her skeleton. We need to clean her up in that lower throat, but still a really, really nice solid gilt to land in 3. Young lady coming out next here. This is one that, in terms of we study the top part of that one's skeleton, has a tremendous amount of shape and dimension. Unfortunately, it's when we step off to the side of her, she kind of falls out of favor for me because she doesn't tie all of her positives together. I've got to blend her a little bit better out of her ham loin. I've got to make her neck tie out ever so slightly higher, maybe lay her blade back just a little bit, but still love the fact that she's able to reach and flex and drive for the amount of muscle that she has working out of her hip and stifle. So still a very, very high quality gilt. Young man coming out next is still a really nice gilt in terms of just being presentable, being free moving, in terms of still having genuine shape and muscle. I've got to square this one up from behind and make her a little bit more secure on those rear 2. But at the end, I still think that one has enough look and a presentation up front, and she's got enough elevation, especially when we get to her cannon bone. That one's got a little bit more scale that lets her go up to a higher weight. It gives her a little bit more advantage. Young man's going to round the class out here with, this one is just more of the moderate built powerhouse one that we kind of would have seen a few years back, that when we wanted these things extremely moderate and more busted open, she'd be your type. Unfortunately, I've got to square her up from behind. I've got to square up out of her hip, and I've got to relax her in her blade to make her a little bit more comfortable, especially when we get her in motion across the surface. That's where she really falls out of favor for me. She just doesn't take a long enough step off of either end for me to be comfortable with moving her up any higher, but still a really nice shapely gilt to round our class off with. Give those kids a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Classic Market Guilds. First place, Boone Burbage. Second place, Madeline Royce. Third place, Carson Sponsel. Fourth place, Savannah Smith. And fifth place, Waylon Sr. Entering the arena at this time is Market Guilds Class 7. Class 8 can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Carson Sponsel, Ronnie Bullock, Nolan Armour, and Claire Westner.
I think we have a very logical place to start in this class, one that just kind of overwhelms the competition and just the sheer freak factor in terms of she has the most spread up high, she has the most rib cage, she's got more sweep to the lower portion of her gut, she's got more chest floor than anything in here. But at the same point, I still think this one proportions out so well in her comfort level for the amount of dimension that she has. I do really, really appreciate it. So really high caliber gilt to start this class off with. Next in line is the young man there in the blue shirt on the far end with the belted gilt. I think that one out of 2 and 3, that one comes out with me with just a shot more comfort, especially when we study him out of the rear too. She's a little safer as we study her from behind, because I think when we get those two gilts side by side, chest floor is very similar, back shape's very similar, so I think there's some very minor details that separate these two. I'm a little bit more comfortable with the young man's darker gilt here, closer to me. That's why he's going to go in 2. Young man down there in 3, I think that's a really high caliber gilt. Unfortunately, I think where she just kind of runs out of steam is she doesn't quite balance as well as the 2 gilts that precede her. I need to square that one up directly from hock to ground. Do love that she's got some extension up front. Love her chest floor. Just got to make her hinge and move better. Got to square it from behind. And then the young ladies the young lady that's coming out here with the blue browed gilt. This one, unfortunately, I do think there are hogs that have a shot more muscle lower down in this class, but what really kind of lets me propel this one up a little higher is her range of motion and her ability to actually use the surface a little bit better than the contemporaries that follow her in this class. I think her mobility is what kind of sets this bottom pair apart. Taking nothing away from the calico gilt that's leaving the ring, I just got to square her up from behind. I've got to make her hinge and move a little bit better, and I've got to relax her in her blade, but still a really nice shapely gilt to round the class off with. Give them a big round of applause.
Congratulations, Class 7 Market Gilts. First place, Jackson Noss. Second place, Case Sexton. Third place, Alex Bosom. Fourth place, Kirsten Gray. And fifth place, Kylie Bosom. We need all first and second placings from Class 5 through 7 to be making their way to the holding pins. Class 5, first place, Ace Tyndall. Second place, Ansel Hatfield. Class 6, first place, Boone Burbage. Second place, Madeline Royce. Class 7, first place, Jackson Noss. Second place, Case Sexton. We need all third placings to be getting ready in the barns.
Feel like I found a logical place to start with the young man's narrow belted gilt here to my right. I think that one, in terms of just being the one that has all the benefits with the fewest amount of negatives for this particular class. She's big, she's shapely, she's got enough look up front, she's got a big engine working in her. This is one that you can really study and you can appreciate her. Would we like to probably elevate her on those front feet ever so slightly, but that's getting very nitpicky for a very competitive gilt. It kind of gets a little bit more challenging as we move down in this class, but the one that surfaced next logically is the young man directly there in front of me. I think that's a gilt that brings a lot of positives to the table. She's big back, she's shapely, she's got good look up front. I love the way that she's actually able to reach and flex. Unfortunately, she just kind of runs out of gas as we study her at the surface and foot and bone. If we could stouten her up there at the ground, I think that could actually we could have a little bit more of a discussion for that top pair. The truly challenging part for me was the two that round our class out with, because they're both cut from the same cloth and they have a lot of the same similarities as well as the same disadvantages. I think the one for me that just had a little bit more look up front was the young man's predominantly black gilt here, and that's where that pair is separated out, and I think that just extra added look up front helps that gilt in terms of being able to mask her ability where we need to change her from behind and square her up from hawk to ground, but still has a ton of shape. Young lady, it's going to round our class out with, I've got to clean this one up in her throat latch, I've got to square her up from behind, but still got to love the amount of overall dimension and shape she has. We've just got to fix some of those minor issues in order for her to be able to fit a little bit more comfortably into this class. Well, let's move our way into the division as those kids head on back to the barn and give them a big round of applause. We get these class winners back out here for division, and I think consistency-wise, they match up in terms of their type and kind very, very well with some very subtle differences. I do think it kind of comes down to a two-horse race, and just one happens to be driving a Sherman tank, and the other one's got a squirt gun right now. And I think that's where the advantages for one just are kind of overwhelming, because not only does this individual have so much spread up high, but the amount of look that they have and the lower jaw, just how clean it is. Would we like to maybe stouten them up in their bone work ever so slightly? But again, getting very, very nitpicky of a very, very good speckle gilt. She's going to be your division champion.
Case Sexton, please be entering the show arena. Alex Bosom, please be making your way to the holding pens.
We dropped that second place out here, and she fits in the mix relatively well. But I think there was one out here that just matches that division champion a little bit better, especially when we talk about silhouette and type and kind. And there's one that just, again, I keep cutting, drawing back to. Young man here in the black shirt is going to have your reserve division.
Ansel Hatfield, please be entering the show arena. Charlotte Willems, please make your way to the holding pens. Madeline Royce, please be entering the show arena. Carson Sponsel, please be making your way to the holding pens. Alex Bosom, please be entering the arena. All other exhibitors in the holding pens are dismissed. Class 9 market gilts, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Hadley Dietrich, Stella Nenichuk, Taylor Dopp, Scarlett Lucky, and Emma Krebs. Congratulations to our middleweight division market gilts, grand champion Jackson Noss, reserve champion Ace Tyndall, third overall Boone Burbage, fourth overall Case Sexton, and fifth overall Madeline Royce. We would like to take a minute to thank all of our sponsors again. Amber Averwater, Arch Materials, Cherry Fork Feed and Supply, David Pennington and Family, Evans Funeral Home, Hatfield Pigs and Pugs, Hilltop Farms, Tracy and Lane Young, Holly Jennings and Family, Jim Crumbacher, a senior Fairboard member, Robert M. Fee, Rorkrick Family, and Wilfer Farms. And we'd like to especially thank Tyndall Feed and Supply, Kevin Tyndall and Family, for donating our champion banners today. So very much thanks to them. Let's give them a round of applause. Class 10 market gilts, please be making your way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Isabella Bickle, Emma Reed, McKenna McAvoy, and Jonathan Noss.
Fun way to start the class off. I know the young lady's gilt's not one to be too great of a partner, but still one when you get a chance to read her. She's got a lot of advantages in this particular class. She's probably the best put together, regardless of angle we kind of evaluate her at. I know she's kind of wanting to be a little bit of a knothead, but now that she's relaxing, that one, she's got genuine shape. She has look up front. She's put together in a sound and functional package, so I think a really solid place to start in a little bit more of a challenging class. 2 and 3 is where I had a little bit more decision-making that I needed to do, and I elected to go with the young lady there in the white because I believe that one has more of an advantage in terms of just how she's overall constructed and her advantages in terms of shape down the top part of her skeleton and out through her hip. I think that one just has a shot more power and dimension, and that's what kind of separates 2 and 3. Young lady coming out here in 3, I still think this is probably one of the best skeleton ones we have in this particular class. Unfortunately, it's where she disappoints me is just in an overall amount of muscle that she brings to the table. I need to have a little bit more genuine shape up high. I got to see her leave me with a little bit more a shot of muscle, but still one that patterns from the side really, really well. One that you got to love her hip and hind leg, especially how she utilizes it, and that's a really nice place to go. Young lady coming out next, I think this is one if we could get it to balance up a little bit better. And by that I mean I got to make her tie together better. I've got to pick her up on those front feet to give her a little bit more height to the point of her shoulder. I've got to square her up out of her hip. I've got to put a little bit more overall flesh in her, but I do have to appreciate the amount of overall punch and power she does possess because that one does have a ton of dimension and power. We've just got to refine it and give it a little bit more polish and look. Young lady, it's going to round our class out with, I think, a very good production-oriented hog. I think in terms of growth rate and performance, you're not going to see that or any that are less. With this one, unfortunately, I just got to stouten her up in her bone work. I've got to give her more genuine shape to her down her top and get some roll and out through her hip and stifle. But one, in terms of growth, performance, and flexibility, she does take the cake in that part because where she does utilize that hip and hind leg, it is very, very good. The young lady that rounds our class off, congratulations to her. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Jonathan Noss and McKenna McAvoy, please be making your way to the holding pens. Congratulations, Class 9 market gilts. First place, Taylor Dopp. Second place, Scarlett Lucky. Third place, Hadley Dietrich. Fourth place, Stella Nenichuk. And fifth place, Emma Krebs. Class 11 market guilds, please begin making your way to the show arena. These exhibitors are Addison Strautman, Shelby Bainham, Briley Klim, Riley Borchers, and Caitlin Brandenburg.
Feel like this class fell together relatively logically for me. A young man directly in the center is going to lead us off. I think with the individual that has the least amount of flaws in this particular class, I think this one, in terms of her extension up front, her bone work, her overall shape, definitely put her in terms of her advantages. I would like to make her a little bit bolder out of her rib cage. I'd like to blend her at her ham-loin junction, but in this particular class, it's getting very, very picky. I think the challenging part is as we move on down through the class, and that's where I kind of spent a little bit more time studying. Young lady there in the blue is going to fall into second. I think that one is just a gilt that in terms of genuine spread up high, big rib, big bodied, big backed. She has all those ESTs. Where she does kind of fall short to the gilt in front of her is she is lacking in terms at the surface in terms of foot and bone, but I think those disadvantages are mitigated when it comes to her overall shape and dimension. Young lady that comes out next, I think this is one that in terms of flexibility and mobility and overall scale and growth has some advantages. I got to give her more genuine roll. I've got to get her a little bit more presentable in terms of skin and hair, and I just got to make her blend together ever so slightly better right there at that ham-loin junction and give her a little bit more flesh. Really nice gilt. Young lady's going to round the class out. This one, unfortunately, this one's on the more moderate side for us, but when we talk about genuine spread and power, she has it in spades. She has a lot of spread. She's stout hip. She's big as she leaves you. She's big chested as she comes at you. I've got to give her more cannon bone length. I've got to make her stride better out of those rear two, and I've almost got to bring those legs more up underneath herself so that way she's a little bit more secure, but still love the amount of shape and rib and body she possesses. Really, really nice gilts around the class off. Give them a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
Congratulations, Class 10 market guilds. First place, Jonathan Noss. Second place, Emma Reed. Third place, McKenna McAvoy. And fourth place, Isabella Bickle. Class 12 market guilds can be making their way to the holding pens. These exhibitors are Caitlin Lindsley, Kaylee Jennings, Lux Shaw, Katie Woofer, and Jax Dodson.
Really fun top trio here for this as we're kind of winding down our market gilt show here. I think these are three gilts that really challenge each other to a high caliber because where they are all so different in so many ways, but at the same point where the priorities that I put today, they have enough of everything to be at the top portion of this class. Young lady that we elect to lead off with, I know this one may not be the most eye-catching one when you first look at this class, but I guarantee you the longer you study her, the more you're going to appreciate what she offers. I know she's not probably the trendiest out of her head and neck, but she has more than enough extension. Her advantages are actually from the base of her skull back. That one, if we study how her angle to her blade, or we study her the angle to her hip, she has mobility off both ends. She has shape working down the top part of her skeleton, strength in her top line if we really want to get nitpicky. Really nice gilt to start the class off with. 2 and 3 is where there's a little bit more of a discussion, and for me, there was one that just had more mobility, and I could tolerate her rear construction a lot better, and that's the young lady there in the black in the corner. This one is more of a safe mark, especially as you read her from behind. She's square, she's true. Does she overwhelm you off at either end? No, but where she is correct, she's correct. She has the genuine shape she needs. She has the flexibility she needs. She doesn't need the overwhelming amount of power to sit in a comfortable second in this class. Great way for that individual. Young lady coming out in 3. This is one that I had a lot of challenge with because there is so much good about this gilt that I really, really like, especially when you study her just on the top portion of her skeleton, or you look at her just from a 3/4 view. She has a lot of power. She has a lot of dimension. Where she really needs corrected is I've got to square her up from behind. I've got to make her better on her front pasterns so she's more comfortable and she'll take a more firm step out of those front two. We fix those two things and we can bring those that second and third place back into discussion. Young ladies that are going to round out the class here, I think both these hogs offer some very similar things in terms of they have product, they have shape, they have dimension. I think the bone and flesh and body of this one here is where we find some more advantages. There is just more overall hog and product here, and I think that's what sorts this bottom pair a little bit easier for me and makes it a little bit more logical. Young lady that's going to round this class off with, I think this is one in terms of just having some look and some appeal. She's got those benefits. I've got to give her more flesh. She's got to have more groceries, especially as we study her in her flank. I just got to get more substance to this animal in order for me to slide her up any higher in this class. Still love her shape. Please give these kids a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn.
We need all first and second place gilts from class 9 through 11 to be making their way to the holding plens. Class 9 first place, Taylor Dopp. Second place, Scarlett Lucky. Class 10 first place, Jonathan Noss. Second place, Emma Reed. Class 11 first place, Briley Clem. And second place, Addison Stropman. All third places need to be getting ready in the barns.
For our last class of market gilts here, I think there's two that kind of separate themselves off pretty quickly for me. I think there's one that just is a little bit more complete and just has the total package for this particular class. That's the young lady in the black on the far end. I think that gilt, in terms of just ticking all the boxes that we need to today, especially at this weight range for these gilts, that's one that satisfies me the most today. I think it became a little bit more kind of challenging, but at the same point, the blue gilt surfaced relatively quickly for me in this class, and I think she's a logical second. I know she's probably not the most overwhelming when it comes to overall shape and power and dimension, but where she's good in terms of her flexibility and her correctness, especially when she does get out and go and she relaxes some, that's one that, and she gets out and moves and motors with still having enough shape up high and just being overall, she's being more correct. This is where some kind of discussion, some differences might lie. I elect to go with the young man next because I think that one, in terms of just being more complete and having enough of everything in terms of not being overly conditioned but still having enough genuine spread, shape, dimension, and body, that one epitomizes that. I think that's where she falls into a logical third for me. This is where there's going to be a little bit more discussion probably. Young lady on the far end is going to go in 4. I think that one, in terms of just pounds of product and dimension, she's got some advantages over the predominantly white one. I've just got to trim her up and give her a more genuine roll to that loin edge, but a really, really nice gilt. Young lady, it's going to round her class out with a blue-browed one. I think in terms of a silhouette, in terms of femininity for a crossbred gilt, she's got that in spades. I've just got to give her some more punch, bust her open off either end, and just give her overall dimension, but still love her hip and hind leg. As we saw, she's probably one of the more mobile ones we've seen today, but please give those kids a big round of applause as they head on back to the barn. We drop these 4 back out here for this final division for your market gilt show, and I think these 4 represent their particular weight classes very, very well. I think there's one that just I keep coming back to in terms of probably not being the most what I would say more trendy show gilt side, but in terms of ruggedness and just the ability to have substance of foot and bone without sacrificing too much in terms of skeletal width and spread up high, I think there's an individual out here that I'm just more comfortable with in the way that she's able to genuinely move and motor around the ring, and she just seems to have the more genuine ring presence, and I do keep getting drawn back to her. Young lady directly in front of me is going to be your division champion.
Addison Stratman, please be entering the arena. Caitlin Brandenburg, please be making near the holding pins.
We get that second place gilt back out here, and we talked him in class, and I think that she has her advantages, but there was one that I think just probably pushed that division winner just a little bit harder in this particular division drive. Young lady in the solid black shirt's going to have your reserve division.
Katie Woofer, please be entering the show arena. Jax Dodson, please be making rid of the holding pins. Emma Reed, please be entering the show arena. McKenna McAvoy, please be making your way to the holding pins.
Jax Dawson, please be entering the arena at this time.
We need all grand and reserve from each of your respective divisions to be making your way to the holding pins. Grand Champion Lightweight Division, Shelby Swader. Reserve, Ace Tyndall. Grand Champion Middleweight Division, Jackson Noss. Reserve, Ace Tyndall. Grand Champion Heavyweight Division, Briley Clem. Reserve, Kaylee Jennings. We need third overalls to be getting ready in the barns. Congratulations, Heavyweight Division, Market Gilts, Grand Champion Briley Clem, Reserve Champion Kaylee Jennings, third overall Jonathan Noss, fourth overall Katie Woofer, and fifth overall Addison Stratman. This is just a reminder that your grand and reserve overall barrows do need to be ready to go in after the conclusion of the gilt show for overall market animal, Grand Champion Paisley Tyndall and Reserve Briley Clem. Also a reminder that you can co-sign your animals now until 1 hour after the conclusion of the overall show.
We just wanted to let everybody know that the sheep show that was posted, it was going to start at 8 a.m. tomorrow. It's actually starting at 9 a.m. So the sheep show in here tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. instead of 8. Thank you.
We want to introduce our judge for one final time tonight, Gus Mitchum. Gus grew up on a fair to finish operation outside of South Salon, Ohio. He and his family own Mitchum Show Pigs, which consists of a herd of 20 purebred sows. Gus attended Miami Trace High School and Southern State College, majoring in ag business. During his livestock judging career, Gus placed with a high individual in the state in both 4-H and FFA judging contests, as well as he and his team winning state. The group went on to be third in the nation, earning them the opportunity of traveling to Scotland and Ireland to judge. Gus has judged shows in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia. Gus enjoys giving back to the youth and volunteers his time with the OH Pig Circuit and the Swine Barn at the Ohio State Fair. Let's give our judge one final round of applause.
We get these guys back out here, and I think that they represent not only their classes but their divisions very, very well. And my hat's off to whoever the breeders, feeders, placers, jockeys, whoever they are that got these things to this point. My hat's off to you because this has been a very, very good show. I've enjoyed evaluating the stock, the kids throughout the day. When we get back in here for this final part of the Gilt Show, I think there's one out here. If you're standing ringside or standing where my boots are right now, I think there's one out here that absolutely commands your attention. And if you don't gravitate towards her, I think that's a conversation we need to have, because regardless of whether this is a breeding or a market show, I think there's an individual out here, regardless of what color you paint her, what ear set you give her, she's going to excel in life. Young man, Spotted Up Gilt's going to be your champion.
Ace Tyndall, please be entering the show arena. Boone Burbage, please have your gilt waiting in the holding pens.
We dropped that reserve from that particular division back out here, and like we talked them in that division drive, I feel like those two gilts were kind of a pair, and I don't really see anything slipping in between those two. Young man, you're going to have your reserve gilt.
Boone Burbage, please be entering the show arena. Ace Tyndall, please be entering the show arena. Jack Wilson, please be waiting in the holding pens. Jack Wilson, please be entering the show arena. We need both the Grand and Reserve Champion Barrows, Grand Champion Paisley Tyndall, and Reserve Champion Briley Clem. And we need the Grand Champion Gil Jackson Noss and Reserve Champion Ace Tyndall to be making their way to the holding pens for the overall Grand Champion hog. Congratulations, Grand Champion Overall Market Gilt, Jackson Noss, Reserve Champion Ace Tyndall, 3rd overall, Shelby Swader, 4th overall, Ace Tyndall, and 5th overall, Briley Clem. Entering the arena at this time is our Grand and Reserve Market Gilt and Barrows. This is the final reminder that you may co-sign all of your animals now until the conclusion of 1 hour up to the end of the show. We also want to give a special thank you to everyone who helped put on the show tonight, all of our ring crew, everybody who helped keep the barns locked down. We appreciate you all. Thank you.
while I have time. Biggest thing is I am very thankful to get the call to come and evaluate not only your livestock but your youth today. I have to give my big thanks to Kelly and them for inviting me to come and do this. I was fortunate enough to do your county born and bred last year and had a fun time doing it. Absolutely had a blast today. I think we had a great set of kids and a great set of livestock. If I can leave you guys with anything before I leave, make sure whoever is the one that helps you do this, you give them a big hug and a thank you. For me, it was my mom and my grandparents that allowed me to pursue the passion that I had, that was livestock. And without them, I never would have made it as far as I did. So for you kids, my biggest thing I can tell you, especially after I lost my grandfather a few years ago, take advantage of the time that you have with your loved ones and your family and whoever you do this with. Because at the end of the day, this isn't a right. It's not a guarantee. Mom and Dad sacrificed a lot to get you here and to get you to this point. So that little bit of thanks goes a long way. And in this industry, our goal is to make you guys better people in the end. Regardless of what banner you get, what place you got, all the ribbons and all the banners, all that fades. What you're left with is the takeaway of what you learned while you participated in this. Did you learn to become a better person, or did you learn to hold grudges and be more bitter about things, or did you learn to lose with grace? If you take away from this industry the benefits that you can achieve in it, your possibilities are endless, and my hat's off to these kids. You guys have a great county and a great set of kids. I'm going to go out and get you a grand champion selected. We talked those barrows early on today, and we talked about how similar those two were in terms of type and kind. Not to quote Austin Powers by any means, but this was our champion's kind of mini-me, especially when we looked into that particular barrow drive. And I really love the way that those pairs silhouetted, because in this day and age, we make these things so attractive and so feminine, even though they're barrows, and they don't seem to have the substance they used to. But where I think this group of hogs all epitomize, men were men and women were women, and they brought their A game today. I still think that pair is very, very good. They're going to stay together. Congratulations to them.
Congratulations, Grand Champion Overall Market Hog, Paisley Tyndall, Reserve Champion Overall Market Hog, Briley Clem. You have until 10:45 to get all of your animals signed up for the sale.